is to hold up your picture and tell me. I'll demo for you. For me, non-acceptance is stressed, tight, and angst. And acceptance is free, open, and me.
Oh, interesting.
Tell me yours.
It's fascinating to see how people respond to these kind of open prompts.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, I have to explain this is a cell phone at the bottom, um, and and admit that I'm a little bit concerned about not taking too long to draw while I'm on a recording. But that in this one instance, the phone serves to um, give me all kinds of like haptic notifications or sound notifications that there is something it's telling me is this intense thing that's just happened in the headlines that I've got to drop everything and know about it now.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the bottom. Do you want to go to the top?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I use the phone for a lot of other things, and I can have it pull in the headlines so that they're sitting there if I choose to look at them at some point. But instead of kind of really fighting it or wrestling it or beating myself up over a fixation on headlines, just kind of know that they're there. If I want to look at them, that's cool. But right now, I'm going to be using that for navigation in places where there's not much cell service.
The trapped place is when you get all entangled in the headlines and the phone is choosing for you where your attention goes, the bing, and you look. And I would imagine that some of the non-acceptance of that is like, I have to look, I have to check. That there's no openness, there's no choice in whether or not you're checking or not. Versus when you're in the navigation space, there's like mountains and you see a lot. Like the first one is just like the image of the phone. The second one is like you can see the mountains and the road, and you can see a lot more when there's more spaciousness. And what would you have to accept in order to do that? In order to not look at your phone so much. What would you have to accept? Because there's some difficult things you'd probably have to accept.
I have to accept that I don't have to keep track of the latest thing that a media company thinks I need to be paying attention to.
Okay. What's the feeling state when you don't keep track? Is it angsty? Is it, oh no, I don't know
It's
what's
just,
happening?
this is definitely coming from a place of anxiety. It's feeling that things are really unsettled and unpredictable. And to the extent I have insight, my suspicion is that there's this attempt to somehow control the uncontrollable by knowing more and by knowing more current information.
Yeah.
Instead of just accepting there's that ambiguity, there are things that are beyond my control, and it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things if I keep track of the headlines.
Yeah. So what we're creating here, and this is very ACT, is the uncertainty, the ambiguity, the fear, which is real. These are true things. I wouldn't say don't be afraid. The fear is about a real thing that is scary. It is scary. What is happening, though, is that in an attempt to manage that fear and that uncertainty, you're checking. And the checking is like, it's our experiential avoidance. Is if I go and I look, and if I get more information, and if I see the headline, or if I'm in the know, that somehow that will help reduce my fear or help manage my fear. But what I saw in your picture is what that does is it puts you in a phone. And what you don't see is the things that actually may be true resources for you when we're in a state of fear. Nature, mountains, expansiveness, the communities that we're in, the true things that are actually sources of resilience during times of distress. And so this is where acceptance comes in. Acceptance doesn't mean that you are going to put your head in the sand. Acceptance means that you free yourself from that fight against reality so that you can actually have more agency in the fear, in the uncertainty, in the, reality of everything is kind of up in the air right now. We don't know where this is all going to go. Yeah. What are your thoughts about that? Do you see the avoidance cycle of it, like how it's that
I,
loop?
I absolutely do. And I think about trying to find, um, well, let me say this. My understanding as far as avoidance is that I set up this or gravitate toward a way of framing this that is, if I can avoid the news completely and I can pretend like it's not there, then everything's going to be better, instead of accepting like it's there, there's ambiguity, this sucks, as you say, this is shit. Um, and and the other thing I think is I want to draw a picture of me walking my dog outside, but that was a harder picture. So, like that.
You'd have to accept some discomfort of
Yeah,
drawing
yeah.
skills.
I guess I have to
Yeah.
accept I'm not a great artist. Yeah. But
Or potential judgment. Yeah.
yeah.
So the path of it's just as much avoidance to check the news as it is just as much avoidance to not check the news. It's what's driving it. Right? So am I not checking the news because now I'm putting all of my scary monsters in a closet and shoving the door so I don't have to
Right.
see them? Or am I sitting there by the door of the closet, opening it and closing it, making sure they're still in there, both of those are controlling your behavior and preventing you from doing all the other things that may be in your room while you're, trying to keep the closet shut. The nature of, when we're talking about acceptance and act, we're talking about it's not acceptance of certain regimes or acceptance of certain belief systems that we morally, ethically, feel strongly are harmful. It's acceptance of what shows up when I'm in the presence of that inside of me, so that I am flexible and free enough to respond from a place of wisdom and clarity and centeredness, and accepting enough of being in the presence of that so I can still choose to walk my dog even when that's happening, so that my agency isn't stolen from me, because I won't allow that to happen. And when I'm in non-acceptance, I'm allowing my agency to be taken from me because I'm putting my hand up against the door, or I'm checking my phone every minute, I'm wrangling monsters. And these ones are kind of not really ones you're going to have much control over.
This reminds me of the response I had after 9/11. So I was in the Coast Guard and I was in DC when that happened. And so on 9/11, driving home that night, like I was going from news station to news station. And I think that set up something that I perpetuated for a while, was able to step back from. But I can see that this is coming back.
So wait, so hold on, because this is like a trauma response for you too.
It's certainly a trauma response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about 9/11. What happened?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Um, well, I had literally just finished a grad school program in intelligence, of all things, the Friday before. And on Monday, I reported into Coast Guard Intelligence, which was this little bitty shop kind of off in the back someplace before 9/11. And when things started to hit, one other person and I went down to the Situation Room for the 4-star, who's the commandant in charge of the Coast Guard. Basically let the watch officers know that little locked closet in the back with that computer system, like we can get in there. And we tried for several hours to find like the highest level classified reports and all this, like to try to feed good information. It wasn't there, right? And in this situation, that reaching for some kind of explanation for what's going on is kind of a fool's errand. It doesn't actually exist. Um, but
What were you feeling during that time? Were you panicking, or were you disconnected, or
um,
what was the emotional state for you?
well, I felt helpless. Um, One thing I did not feel, at least consciously, was a concern for my own safety. I was very concerned about my friends and family. I had a voicemail from my sister that one of these planes had flown over the apartment building. The one that hit the Pentagon had flown over her apartment building. So there's voicemail like, this plane just ran over my apartment building. And I So kind of worried about people I loved, and then worried about the country, um, and kind of feeling helpless, like there was nothing I could do. I had done all this training, like this is what I trained for, and I couldn't, I couldn't change anything or save anybody.
So how does that show up now with what's happening now? With like that familiar feeling you said, it feels kind of like a little bit like that.
Had no idea this is where we're going to go. Wow, thank you. Well, so for one, I've got two kids in college now. So there's a fair amount of like this degree of agency that I think that I have, or that I gravitate toward, or that I act as if I believe I have, that I can do great things for people and reach out into time and space to help people out or do good things for them. That's somewhat limited. Um, Not sure where you want me to go. I mean, on reflection, one of the things it's making me think of is spending more time focusing on the moment. My kids come home from college for the weekend. Like, it's a good time to do stuff with them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that there's, I mean, the word that you said about 9/11 was helpless. And maybe there's that similar feeling of like helplessness now. And that, and then going back to your picture, like what do you do when you're helpless? You go to do the things that you're trained to do. Like, so are you a psychologist now? Are you a therapist in the military? What's your profession?
Oh, yeah. No, well, I was an intelligence officer in the Coast Guard. I've been retired for 12 years, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker in private practice in Oregon.
Okay. Okay, so you were intelligence officer. You're a fascinating human. You were intelligence officer in the Coast Guard, and now you're a social worker.
Mhm.
And so we do what we're trained to do, right? So the Coast Guard training, you go and find information, you go and figure stuff out, you seek out intelligence. I guess I
Right.
don't know. Um, and so but that feeling of helplessness is not working. But there's two things that there's something that rang in my head when it's like, and then your sister calls you, and your sister's calling you to tell you about the plane that's over her head, right? And that yes, there's helplessness of like I can't give you the intelligence to figure out the plane, but there's also hopefulness in that I'm talking to my sister at a time when she's coming to me, like that there's a connection there. And we're not helpless in our connection. We may be helpless in our intelligence, being able to seek out the solution or even solve the problems that are unsolvable. But where acceptance comes in is, can I accept that I'm helpless over this, but also accept that I have agency over this, which is my values? So we fast forward to your kids in college, and I do a whole course with college students. I teach a course on climate resilience for college students, and they talk about hopeless. They're like, what do you,
Y'all messed this thing up. Thanks a lot. Right. Yeah.
thank you for the future that I'm sitting in right now. I'm about to graduate and want to go get a job. Okay. Um, and there's helplessness in that, but then there's I know Robin Walter hates the word hope, but I think there's hopefulness in our agency of what we do when we're around the people that we love, or what do we do, how do you live up as values? And then that's the ground with which we can stand on. That's not checking our phone, it's putting our phone down so we connect with what's here, with where we can.
I for one would be on the side that looks to hope. I finished 5 years as a social worker at a big cancer center up here. And I think in dealing with people in varying degrees of mortal threat, about 150 of whom passed away while I was caring for them over that time, figuring out what hope is actually like a really inherently kind of human thing, I think,
Right.
and not gravitating toward it as like this sort of Pollyanna-ish, oh, everything's going to turn out fine kind of thing. Like that's not what I go to for hope.
What do you go to for hope? Tell me.
Well, I think the time frame changes a lot. It very much gets into I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and I'm going to see the sunrise, and I can focus on some things that are positive. Someone who loves me is going to come and spend some time with me. Um, I can see signs that spring is coming. There's some, blossoms coming out on trees, some lambs being born. That there's kind of this hopefulness, and the fact the universe is so much bigger than I am too. Things don't end with me, and I can tap into that some in the moment. This morning, all day today, this week, over the weekend.
You know what gives me hope?
What gives you hope?
Talking to people like you. Hearing the voices of and the perspectives of people, not the voices and perspectives of headlines. People that notice things like baby lambs and care about their kids coming home from college. And just regular old humans that have hearts, It gives me hope for all of us, because there's more of us than we know out there, but more than what we see on our, because we're not spending enough time with that, with each other, having conversations like this and getting to know, like, oh, your fear right now is linked to what happened to you at 9/11. My fear right now is linked to what happened to me when I was a kid. Like hearing that.
Yeah. I can't help but link it to how I try to live my life personally and professionally as well. I mean, there's this inherent belief that there's an interconnectedness among us and our environment and other living creatures around us, rocks, trees, streams, mountains, the beach, and that we're at our most authentic and deepest selves when we acknowledge we're in some kind of relationship with other people. All different kinds of relationships, but instead of this kind of transactional zero-sum game kind of thing, or hey, it's a pie and I'm going to take all the slices. What if we got together and we made more pies together and then we shared them with other people, right? Um, that that sounds a lot better to me. Um,
So going back to the pictures that we first drew,
yeah,
you know, um, this is how I feel when I'm in my scary, the world is coming to an end. I have kids too, place. What are my kids going to have to face? And then this is what I'm feeling right now, just in your presence with you, and we didn't know this was going to happen. But part of his acceptance is just saying yes to the moment, saying yes to what's here, whatever it is.
yeah. Yeah,
About
appreciate the invitation, and I'm glad you discerned that. And this all came from you not hitting the record button an hour and some change ago.
yeah. And maybe like, oh crap, this is gonna like, what do I do? Accept. You say yes to what is here. What's here? Oh, Greg is an hour late. I didn't press record. We have an awesome session.
Indeed. And thank you.
Yeah. So translating to act, some of the processes that we've been even just going through with each other. One that really stands out to me is like how these processes are related to each other, because we opened with acceptance and non-acceptance, but the sister and brother that sit right close next to them are the sense of self. Because when you're talking about interconnectedness and you're talking about nature, and I'm talking about our connection here, and that self, that expansive self, can really support our acceptance. It's so much more, we're so much more free to accept when we don't feel like it's just us that is accepting it. It's like we're leaning back into something bigger. And then the other process that I really noticed show up, that's the right next door to this acceptance process, as we were talking, is the process of values. Why would we want to accept? Why would we want to step back from our phones and connect? And that those values often boil down to love, loving people, loving each other. You said sharing a pie. That's a value of, sharing generosity, compassion, and that then we may be, that can also support our acceptance when we can identify our values. It's like these are synergistic processes. Thoughts?
I think got a bunch of them. One of them is, I could probably spend the rest of the time asking you about your drawing there, but
You can ask me about it if you want.
yeah, right. Like switch over to therapist mode very quickly.
You can.
Yeah.
We can. I'm totally fine trading tables. That's fine.
Oh, that's
But yeah.
cool. I think where I am as somebody who has been kind of trying to get my heart and my brain around ACT for a couple of years is that your observations illustrate both kind of the strength and the authenticity of it that resonates with our human experience and what we know to be true, and also the degree of its complexity that makes it a bit more challenging to grab onto as a modality, uh, because to some extent, you've just sketched out acceptance, values, and sense of self and their interrelatedness, um, and all these different graphic representations we have, hexaflex, whatever, um, sends the implicit message that these are distinct things. And one of the things I remember from Sedona is kind of how fluidly it'd be like, okay, so this is the main, we're going to focus for this session on acceptance, and things flow one into the other. And I don't know if it's more of a Venn diagram or whatever, but yeah, it's these different lenses to help us kind of understand aspects of it, but also the notion that they're completely separate from each other is kind of an artificiality as a support to learning and conceptualization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Artificiality and support of learning and conceptualization, I think, is helpful. It's that it's a both and situation. For breakfast this morning, my son was making an egg, right? So he's frying an egg, and you could say, like, it's got the protein and it has the choline and it has the the fats, and it's an egg. It's like it's all those things. And when you go down to your chickens and you get your own egg and you crack your own egg and you're 12 years old and you're making your own egg under fire, that egg is like, it's got a lot of things going on in it besides choline and protein. And so when we're thinking about these processes and working with human beings, it can be very artificial to break them down into these 6 core processes. And sometimes I find that it's just the headiness of it all. And then it can be helpful because sometimes it's helpful to put a name to what these different elements are, so that they can, it's not so amorphous. It's like, oh, this egg is good for me because it's got some good protein in it. It's got some good, I made it myself, so it's got some autonomy to it, or whatever it is. And we move in and out of that. I mean, I think that the flexibility of being an ACT therapist is both having an understanding of the theory, but then also kind of, you're just sort of an observer of that theory while you're in the moment with the person, and that you can hold both. You can do that. We can all do that. We can drive and talk to someone at the same time, so that's what's happening for us. But for me, the juicy parts are, like in our conversation, the juicy part is seeing your history show up in the here and now, and then how that, like, that's fascinating. And if you're too stuck in your head about the where you're at on the hexaflex, you'll miss that. And good therapists, we could lose a good therapist to a theoretical model very easily.
Definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the foundational thing has got to be human beings making some kind of authentic connection, right? That's, um, I like the point you raised too, though, like doing telehealth modality, right? So if I'm talking, I have clients on the same screen that I've got you and myself on right now, and I'm talking to them, and I've got their health record up here, and if I can become driven by the template
Oh,
uh,
geez.
for notes or
Really?
something, right? I'm saying that's kind of that's a hazard I recognize,
Totally.
right? So like I was working with a guy yesterday, and I typed a thing or two, and I'm thinking, forget about it. Like I'll go back and look at that right now. He needs to see me
Well, what
paying
happened?
attention,
What
so he knows
happened?
I'm actually hearing him.
Yeah,
Right?
what happened between the two of us in the beginning of this conversation? It was just the two of us. I didn't even feel like we were on a screen.
I agree.
I felt like we were just in a moment with each other.
I agree.
So
And I,
what is that? Like that's intimacy. And how do we create those conditions for intimacy with people even when we're on a screen, right? Like could we describe what happened there? Like what was that? Because I felt it, you know?
I think that you set things up to make them accessible. You saw me in the conditions under which I joined the group. You acknowledged I was late. You were a bit empathetic about it. I felt seen and respected. I didn't feel challenged. It wasn't like, hey, you're an hour late. And it's like, oh wow, like, and pretty quickly, like this invitation, like, hey, what do you think about sticking around? We can record a session. Um, and you called me by name, and so um, pretty soon I felt like you and I were chatting.
Mhm.
Um,
You know what
you
I
asked,
think it was? I
what
don't
do you
think it
think
was
was?
empathy. I don't think so. I think that's the therapist answer of like I think it was
Oh,
impulsivity. I think it was impulsivity. That it was riding the wave of the moment that we were in together. And just in going with it. A client walks in the door
yeah,
and
yeah.
they're bringing the wave of whatever they're walking in the door with and like hopping on with them, as opposed to settling in. Okay, let's talk about blah, blah, like that there's an energetic field within which we all share with each other. And so you coming in late, me being effing up and like not recording, but then we just rode that wave of weirdness into something. And so I mean, if we're talking about acceptance, that's also just like the acceptance of what's here and now, and not getting too much into our agenda, which I think can pull us out. Um,
I mean, absolutely. There was a near-term future that I thought existed, that I was going to join a group with a whole bunch of people and kind of blend in with the group. And the next thing I know, I definitely see the impulsiveness thing. I
yeah,
suspect, given infinite time to answer the question, I'd come up with infinite aspects to it that's
yeah, yeah,
centered. But I love this observation regarding impulsiveness, because there is that degree of like, there's a snap decision.
yeah.
Uh, hey, what do you think about trying this? Okay.
Yes.
I mean, there it is. That was the extent of the conversation. It wasn't, let's draw a chart with pluses and minuses. And
Yes.
it was very
Therapists
much,
are not impulsive enough. We need more therapist impulsivity. And we're trying to tone down the impulsivity of our clients. Like, I think we need to be more impulsive, but you're impulsive with wisdom. Like it's not like it's not harmful impulsivity. And maybe the word isn't impulsive. It's like riding, for me, it's energy. I'm super into energy. Everything is about energy right now for me. Like where am I contracting? Where am I expanding? Where is my client contracting? Where are they expanding? How could we ride some kind of energy together so that we're in a more interconnected space, the energetic field that could really support all of us. That's the energetic field of spring. Like you see the potential energy of
Yes.
seeing a little bud coming out. It's like, oh my gosh, there's so much potential energy here. There's so much hope, right? That is the part of what being impulsive is dropping everything to see that, dropping the plan so that you see that. And when we can see that, then there's more vitality to our experience. Yeah.
I mean, it's not scripted. It's a much more kind of authentic in the moment. You can't have 5 things in your head while you're doing it, because this is just something that's coming at you right now in real time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do wonder, with the drawing that you did, the bottom just looked like this squiggle, like a bunch of string or something. The top, the main feature, I noticed it looked like a Chartres Cathedral labyrinth or something. I don't, so I wasn't quite sure about what that was. I was curious about that.
You know me too well to know my obsession with labyrinths. But I my bottom is a place that I wrote the word stressed, tight, angst. And it's a place that I go into a lot when I'm in fear and I have arrows going in. So I feel a sense of like kind of inward collapsing when I'm in a place of non-acceptance. And I go really inward, and then I get really kind of like nitpicky, negative, angsty about that I'm not doing things well, or I'm, it's a very kind of like self-flagellation kind of energy inward. Yuck. And that's my sort of non-acceptance. Like if I kind of like can like get small. And my history has been about getting small, right? Like, so like with anorexia, it's like, how small can you get? How tight can you get? And for me, when I'm in a place of acceptance, expansiveness, feeling of interconnection, it's a spiral of energy outwards where it's almost like dissolved between me and you. And just held supportive. There's just a lot of space where I could be whatever size I need to be in this world, and be, supported by that. And I have different practices that help me with that. But I find that the best practice is through connecting with humans and nature to get me to that more open space, which requires some impulsivity. It requires like, okay, I'm not gonna do the thing that I'm supposed to do this afternoon. Instead, I'm gonna go outside and, go to the beach. Or, I mean, you're in winterland. We have plenty of plants growing.
It's not too bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have an awful lot of conifers and such. Yeah. But, yesterday I was looking out the window and, oh, there's a break in the rain. I don't have clients. Let me grab the dog.
Go.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And the thing about dogs, they're so sweet because they're just like waiting for us to do that any time of day. Like, I'm ready.
Shouldn't take that for granted.
No kidding.
It's a gift right there.
Yeah. And our dogs don't last that long.
Yeah.
Little puppies. I know they're just wait. Like, I could go up right now. I could take my dog right now. She'd be happy as a clam. Wherever I want to go, she'd go. Okay. So what's our takeaways on acceptance here? There's people that are watching this. Did you forget we're being recorded? What are our takeaways?
Oh, I didn't forget.
Yeah.
I didn't forget. Well, I think surrounding acceptance in particular, one of the things I notice in my own behavior and the way I'm thinking about things, one aspect of it can be kind of the more I fight it, the more I try to pretend like it's not there, the more it draws me in. One image I use sometimes in some contexts is, imagine if you're on a bicycle and you look up and you see a big rock. And if all you do is you look straight at that rock and you keep your eyes on it and you say, I don't want to hit that rock, I don't want to hit that rock, I don't want to hit that rock, like as not, you're going to steer right into it and smack it. So not so much that I'm going to pretend like it's not there or anything, but I may be able to use my peripheral vision and put it in context in this larger universe and acknowledge it's there, think about it, give it some space, look at it if I need to. If I'm fascinated about, which era it came in or how it was formed, I can stop and look at it. But it doesn't become the only thing I'm thinking about, that I'm focusing on, and it doesn't become something I try to pretend isn't there.
Nice. So whatever that rock is for you, I hope that you have that experience, and that we all have that experience, and then acknowledge that sometimes then that rock gets big again and we're in the bottom picture. That we just move in and out all the time of acceptance and non-acceptance, and hopefully we can be observers of that. Help our clients see that when they're in that space, get to know it. Like, this is what it feels like for me. This is a familiar thing. Get to know our patterns around what we do, and then have our practices, our ways of being that support it, like a shift, which I felt with you right now. So I feel like this has been 45 minutes of acceptance practice between the two of us. Very cool.
Thank you.
And we'll let people watch this. We, at the end of our group today, Greg, we just talked about how to bring this practice of acceptance into the work that we do, a little bit about how we as therapists tend to get into spaces of non-acceptance and rigidity, and we don't jump in, we aren't bold, we don't do things like draw pictures with our clients or experience that kind of intimacy, and how to maybe focus on that this month of showing up with acceptance, but then also having that a little bit more openness in our sessions and our work to model it for our clients as well. So good. How did you feel about me putting this on the podcast?
Awesome.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, if this is, I do believe this is about being in different kinds of relationships, and here are different people, part of a larger community, different levels of experience, but all this desire to share this information and help other people flourish. Right. So if this helps one person who can listen to it, then it's worth it. If it helps two, that's a bonus. If it helps 50 or 100, well, that's awesome. Yeah. Okay.
Really? Okay. Well, if you're open to that, I just might. I'm doing more of these. Yeah.
Yeah, by all means.
Okay. Potential. Okay. I'll have to listen to it again and see.
Okay. Yeah.
If it's podcast, if it's, it's definitely training material. If it's podcast material for the general public, is sort of another question.
Absolutely.
I thought it was pretty good.
I'm sure you'll figure out what works best. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.